Every gilded cage is built with walls of comfort. The only question is what you're paying for them.
All right, so today we're heading to ancient Egypt. But forget everything you learned in history class. We're not talking about the official story. Nope, we're looking up to the stars to unpack a really wild theory about the Giza pyramids. A theory that says the real message has been staring us in the face for, get this, over 12,000 years. So let's just jump right in with the big question. What if the pyramids hold a secret that's way, way older than we think? I mean, we're all taught they were built around 4,500 years ago, right? But what if that's not the whole story? What if the real blueprint for these massive structures wasn't drawn on papyrus, but was written in the stars, telling a story from a time so ancient it's almost impossible to imagine? Okay, so this whole thing really boils down to two huge questions that have puzzled people forever. What exactly were the Giza pyramids for? And maybe the bigger mystery, when were they really, truly built? The hunt for those answers? Well, that's where things get interesting.
You know, for decades, the pyramids have been this magnet for theories that totally challenge mainstream history. Egyptologists, they have their timeline pretty much locked down. But come on, the sheer size and mind-boggling precision of these things, it just makes you wonder, right? It's always fueled speculation. And then, back in the 90s, a whole new story popped up, and it was a pretty radical one.
And this is where we meet our main players, Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock. They came forward with this bombshell idea they called the Orion Correlation Theory. And their whole premise was, look, if you want to solve the puzzle of what's on the ground in Giza, you've got to start by looking up at the stars. So, what is the Orion Correlation Theory? Well, in a nutshell, it's the idea that the layout of the three big pyramids at Giza, it's not random at all. They believe it's a deliberate map, a mirror image right here on Earth of the three bright stars that make up Orion's belt. An incredible idea, right? But it's not just what they represent, it's when. And this is the number that just blows the whole thing wide open. 10,500 B.C.E. I mean, think about that. Mainstream archaeology says the pyramids were built around 2,500 B.C.E. But Bauval and Hancock ran these complex computer simulations of the night sky, and they found that the one single moment in time when the pyramids on the ground were a perfect match for Orion's belt in the sky, it wasn't in 2,500 B.C.E., it was 8,000 years before that. Okay, so check this out. Take a look at the Giza pyramids. See how two of them are in a perfect line, but that third, smaller one is just a little bit offset. Now, look at Orion's belt, as it would have appeared in 10,500 BCE. It's the exact same pattern, the same offset. And get this, the brightness of the stars even seems to match the relative sizes of the pyramids. For Bauval and Hancock, there was just no way this could be a coincidence. This was a message. But hold on, because a giant star map was really just the tip of the iceberg. This idea started to grow into something much, much bigger. It became this grand, epic story about a totally forgotten chapter of human history. And this is where their 1996 book, Message of the Sphinx, really takes off. Okay, so here's where the story gets really wild. They propose that a super advanced, but now forgotten, civilization was the real builder of the Giza complex. And that magic date, 10,500 BCE, wasn't just a random alignment. It marked their arrival in Egypt. Now, astrologically speaking, that date falls right in the age of Leo. And what's sitting right there at Giza? The Sphinx, a giant lion. Coincidence? They think not. They argued the Sphinx is basically a giant marker for that specific time, pointing to a secret chamber that would prove a prophecy made by the famous American psychic Edgar Cayce. And this quote, this really gets to the heart of how ambitious their theory was. They're saying the entire Giza Plateau wasn't just a bunch of tombs and statues. In their eyes, it was this massive, ancient device, a kind of cosmic clock designed by ancient sages to trigger huge, world-changing events and kickstart a new golden age for humanity. I mean, we're talking about something way beyond a simple monument. And it didn't stop there. The theory just kept expanding, getting more and more cosmic. By 1998, with their book, The Mars Mystery, they started floating the idea that maybe this lost advanced civilization wasn't even from Earth. They actually started looking into a potential link with an ancient Martian civilization. So yeah, things went extraterrestrial. But you know how these things go. Just when this theory was at its absolute peak of popularity, a major critique came along. And what's so fascinating is that it didn't come from mainstream archaeologists who you'd expect to push back. No, this critique came from inside the world of alternative history itself. This came in the form of a 1999 book called The Stargate Conspiracy, written by Lynn Picknett and Clive Prince. And they basically decided to take a really hard, critical look at all these alternative Egypt theories that were becoming so popular. And their critique was pretty sharp, to say the least. They went through the Orion theory and pointed out what they saw as some serious flaws. They questioned the math, the astronomical models, the conclusions, the whole shebang. But their biggest point was this. They argued that guys like Bauval and Hancock were just creating a new kind of rigid belief system, a new alternative orthodoxy to replace the mainstream one they disliked so much. And that idea led them to what is really the core of their entire argument. They started to believe that this wasn't just about a different interpretation of the facts. It was about the motive. Why were they so invested in this specific story? So the question they asked was, if the Orion Correlation Theory wasn't a pure objective historical investigation, then what was it? Picknett and Prince became convinced that there was a hidden agenda at play. And this is their big reveal, the real heart of their critique. Picknett and Prince basically argued that the whole Orion theory was reverse-engineered. They claimed it wasn't a case of following the evidence to see where it leads. Instead, they said Bauval and Hancock started with the answer they wanted, that 10,500 BCE date, which comes straight from Edgar Cayce's prophecy, and then worked backwards, making all the data fit that conclusion no matter what.
So in the end, the whole Orion mystery leaves us with this really big, fascinating question that goes way beyond Egypt. When we look into the deep past, are we actually uncovering hard, objective facts, like artifacts buried in the sand? Or are we sometimes just finding incredibly detailed, beautiful reflections of the stories we already want to be true? It's something to think about.